GearWebsites.com is your source for firearms-based playing cards and books. We also have mugs, shirts, and posters with designs that we've made live. Of course, we have patches. Every Friday is Free Patch Friday. We appreciate your support. Thank you for shopping at GearWebsites.com.
It's 11:59 at Radio Free America, and this is Uncle Sam with music and the truth until dawn. Right now, I got a few words for some of our brothers and sisters in the occupied zone. The chair is against the wall. The chair is against the wall. John has a long mustache. John has a long mustache. It's 12 o'clock, Americans, another day closer to victory. And for all of you out there on or behind the lines, this is your song.
And welcome everybody to our daily gun show. Come to you live every weeknight at midnight Eastern, and we talk about guns for about an hour. And each night we have a different objective, a different goal. On Mondays, we talk about motivation for Second Amendment activists whenever possible. I bring someone on to have a conversation. And if I can bring a Second Amendment activist on, it's even better. So tonight we've got Charlie Cook, riding shotgun with Charlie. Thanks for joining.
Thanks for having me, G-Webs. This is a lot of fun. I'm looking forward to this.
Right on. Yeah, and I was just we were just talking offline. I feel like I've chatted with you a million times. I think we've chatted offline a couple of times, and then in real life a couple of times, and then I watch like all your shows. So I feel like I don't know, you must get this all the time from people that when you're online all the time, people come up and go, "Oh, I feel like I know you."
People do get to know you, and I've had some people ask me about things and want to talk about things. I'm like, oh my God, how did I find this out? When did I say this? How did this come up on a show?
Like you said something under your breath on the like during the 3/4 into a live show somewhere with Matt or something, and then 6 months later somebody's talking about it or asking a question.
I'm like, I don't think people were really paying attention.
So I don't want to assume nothing. So I was kind of telling Charlie offline, like what I try to do with my interviews is, especially on the first interview, is give people an opportunity to talk about two big things: who they are first off, and then why they do what they do, and then how they do what they do. Since we're talking to Second Amendment activists, in my experience, just about everybody, there's not any superheroes. Nobody got bit by a radioactive Second Amendment bug or anything. Everybody's just got some motivation, and they're able to do what they're able to do. So what I try to do is give them an opportunity to talk about that. As I was telling Charlie offline, that most of the time when you bring someone who's an activist on to a show, it's to get their point of view on a subject or a topic of the day, and then you have your 10-minute segment and you brush them off so you can talk about something else. And I try to do the opposite of that. And well, I was actually telling Charlie that I kind of build this off of James Kalita, a guy that did what was it? Out of Order with James Kalita podcast. Yeah, Charlie's first person I know that's heard of that guy. So let me start with that. Well, I guess I'll let me finish. So what I try to do is give you a chance to talk about the why you do what you do and the how. So I appreciate you coming on and doing that. But again, since I'm assuming that most people have talked to or heard Charlie or listened to enough of the shows that you understand who Charlie is, I don't want to assume and make this the only that, unless we can talk about that the whole time, then more than welcome to. But I don't have a script here, so go ahead.
Let's start with the James Kalita thing. So I was less than a year at doing riding shotgun, and James reached out to me, and he was in New Jersey, and he said, "Hey, listen, I'd love to have you on my show. I've got a show. It's the Out of Order podcast. I'd never heard of it, and so I started to listen to it, and he's like, "Hey, I want to be on your show." And I'm like, "Well, I drive people around while we talk. So I'm going to have to plan a trip down to Jersey." And I was going down to, oh my gosh, I was going down to DC for something. I don't know if it was the Heller 10 or it was in 2017. It might have been for something else. Anyway, so we made a plan to meet at the Gun for Hire range, and I said, all right, here's what we'll do. I will interview you as we drive into New York City for my show, and then you can interview me for your show on the way back. And he was putting out a show. Man, he did this, I think, for over a year, where he put out a show every day for over a year, which is like, to my mind, that's a lot of work.
I didn't realize there was that many of them. I found it, I think, after that effort, because it seemed like they were, I think, over, also ending whenever I came across it. So then you were on his chat, and he's been on yours. Do you remember what number?
Oh my gosh, it was less than 30.
Oh, it was a while ago. Okay.
It was a long, yeah, it
So
was
we're
quite a while ago.
talking probably
I want to say,
November of 19.
you know what? I'm going to say, um, so in 2016 is when I had the idea for the show. I tried filming some shows. Um, I didn't, I'm trying to hold a day job down and a career and all this other kind of stuff. But I filmed some shows in 2016, and then I spoke at Gun Rights Policy Conference and met more people, and then I started to go to more things, and then it was I'm going to say it was in 2018. I went down and interviewed him because I didn't start putting shows out, I think, until like the fall of 2017.
Okay. I was trying to unsuccessfully find it. I'm going to let somebody else find it. That's probably
You know what?
smarter.
I
We
just
do
dug
have
it up.
people
It's
watching live.
number 26.
Okay, awesome. Thanks. So I'll still let somebody else find the thing and link to it here while we're live. We'll use the power of other people watching
Yeah.
live. So again, I was kind of mentioning that before, but thanks to all the people that are watching live. I do see some questions coming in, and we'll grab those. But okay, appreciate that kind of starting us off with with your experience with James, so you understand Michael. And let's start with that. Would you give us maybe an elevator speech? Because I'm again assuming I don't want to assume that everyone knows who you are. So could we do a quick elevator speech on what's well? I know that Charlie Cook is doing more than riding shotgun with Charlie, but I think of you as riding shotgun with Charlie. So if you would, who are you? And then we'll
Yeah.
get the big question: why do you do what you do?
All right. Well, I am. I've been an instrumental music teacher for. I always tell people 100 years, and I tell my students I've been a teacher since the 1900s. And I grew up as a gun agnostic, and I wasn't a gun guy. Wasn't for it. Wasn't against it. It just seemed a little crazy to me and dangerous to me. Um, all I wanted to be when I was young is I just wanted to be a gigging musician and play with big name people and travel around the country. So after September 11th, there was one of my schools I was teaching at. They said they called everyone in and said if anyone was in the school that wasn't supposed to be, an active shooter before they called an active shooter, then the principal would say get on the intercom and say the Eagle has landed. And that meant that everybody needs to lock their doors and hide under the desks. And I sat with a bunch of teachers, and I said, that seems kind of crazy. I've got a 9-year-old son, a 9-month-old son, excuse me. And I said, if the teachers on the first floor all had guns, they could shoot the bad guy on the first floor, and teachers on the second floor can keep on teaching. And they said, that's a little crazy. And I said, I don't really think so. So we had a February vacation, and I'm like, February vacation comes, I am going out and I'm going to gun license. I'm going to show these people what it's about. And I didn't know what the process was and never fired a gun. I was a card carrying NRA member. I was getting the magazines, and I became a pro gun guy without doing any live firing. And then that fall in 2002, I took a class, an NRA basic pistol class with the state's pro gun group, and I shot for the first time, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is the coolest thing ever. And then that led to joining a shooting range, and I inherited some guns that were my father's, that I didn't know that were in our house when I grew up, and joined a shooting range, and I became a range safety officer so I could start running bowling pin shoots. I started helping with these firearm safety education days where you teach people how to shoot. And then from there, the director of education for the Gun Owners Action League said I should become a firearm instructor. So I did the process to do that so I could teach home firearm safety and the NRA basic pistol class. And I did that for a little while, just thinking I could make enough money to support my shooting habit. I eventually got a job working part-time at a shooting school, and that led me to, standing up in front of 20 people doing the shtick for the class. And I said, hey, I'm bringing in $2,000 for the boss. How can I bring in $2,000 for Charlie? And that's when I started personal shooting instruction, and I started teaching classes on my own. After a few years of doing Toastmasters, I was doing this manual called Communicating on Video. And I had to interview someone for 5 to 7 minutes and be interviewed by someone. I had to do a press conference. I had to do a video editorial and then make a video for someone. And all of that was when James Corden's carpool karaoke was becoming kind of cool, and I'd see this chubby guy that's English, and I said, well, I'm a chubby guy and I speak English. I think I can do what he does. And I said, I'm gonna, being a gun guy and getting more into firearms and everything. I said, I'm gonna interview people in the cars. We drive around and talk about gun stuff, and I'm gonna call it Riding Shotgun. And writingshotgun.com was taken. I'm like, I'm calling it Riding Shotgun with Charlie, because I couldn't come up with anything else. So that's what I went with, and that's what I stuck with. And from there, I contacted Ken Blanchard and Anthony Calandro, and I interviewed those guys. And then I interviewed Mark Walters from Armed American Radio. And Mark called me up after I interviewed him in Minneapolis. And he said, hey, this is really cool. This is nobody's doing anything less. I want to help out. And I said I wasn't really sure what that meant. So he called me 2 days after that. He's like, do you want to speak at the Gun Rights Policy Conference in Tampa in a month? And I said, yes, I do. So made a trip, went down, spoke at Tampa, got to meet all the pro-gun folks. And that's how I got into the circle.
Dude, I don't even want to ask, but do you think how many times you've given that elevator speech? I mean, that's less than 11 minutes, and that was effective. It was efficient and concise. It wasn't rushed, right? That was you got the information. I've heard it a million times, so I know where you abbreviated some things.
Yeah.
But how many times have you said that? I mean, do you have to end up saying that a lot? Is like trying to get people into the vehicle?
I try not to. Like if somebody has me on their show and wants to know, I'll give them something like that. But what I find really cool is when it's really cool when I reach out to people and they're like, oh yeah, I've seen your show. Oh yeah, I know you're the guy that does the stuff in the car. Yes, I'll take it. That is what I do, stuff in the car. And it's honestly, it's even cooler when somebody reaches out to me and says, hey, I've seen your show. How do I get on the show? Like, how do you plan all this stuff out? When can I get someone on the show, or when can I be on the show? So that's always cool when people reach out and want.
I gotta stop muting. I mute because I got a lot of fans going here, and I figure you're probably hearing the background noise. And then I'm trying to take notes. I started taking notes as I interview people, so that there's something put on Substack. I don't know if you've used Substack. But
gosh,
just to have something besides a transcript to have words, and
Gotcha.
What happens is I end up taking forever to unmute. So sorry about leaving you hanging there.
That's right.
So they found the show, and well, maybe they're going to find the show. But either way, we know that it was you said it was number 26. That was James Kalita on.
The show with James Kalita was number 26.
Right on. Thanks. So I'll find it later on. And what's cool about that is because then I'm sure people have heard me talk about that, because I pretty much try to give him credit for doing the show the way he did. So let me go back to that real quick. What did you think about his format? Kind of just leaving people hang for 40 minutes or 20 to 40 minutes, kind of was organic.
So I'm a talker. I thought it was good. I always tell when I was at Toastmasters, people would say, well, I've got to do an icebreaker speech and people about myself, and I don't know what to tell them. And I would always say, well, you're an expert on you. You tell us what you want us to know about you. So, I could, like you said, you've heard me do this speech a bunch of times and talk about this. I wish I could narrow it down and make it shorter, but I think there's a lot of moving parts, and I think they're all integral, and I think they all, one thing leads to another and leads to another and leads to another. So giving someone the opportunity to talk about stuff is great. I've had some people on the show where they don't have too much to talk about, and I'm like, oh my gosh, all right, I've got to come up with a story. Like, what do I have that I can sort of relate to what they're talking about, and kind of keep things moving along. But yeah, it's kind of a bummer that James stopped doing the show and kind of just disappeared. I don't want to say he hasn't disappeared.
It's the nature though of grassroots. I think at least that's the way I looked at it. He was just an individual that got fed up and did it, and then he did some stuff and he contributed. It's like passing the baton, right? So I don't think it's on anybody's back.
Oh no, not at all.
Run
not
their
at
whole
all.
lifetime, right? But when they can, it's great. But when you're just looking to help, then I'll take what I can get.
Absolutely. I mean, you take what you can get, you do what you can, and eventually, eventually something happens. Like maybe your life changes, your career changes, you don't have the time, you have the energy. Um, maybe your home situation changes. Who knows?
Oh yeah, exactly. And there's definitely not a lot of scratch. I mean, there's possibility, but it's not like anything else. Well, it's not like some other things in the field where you can make a living doing it
Mm,
easily, at least. So one of the questions is, well, the big question is going to be why. So I like to leave that open ended, and I think we're actually pretty good timing for it. So, I kind of led up to it a little bit too much. I should have just asked you the open ended why without a bunch of comments there. So take as much time as you'd like. And I don't know if it's something like you say you like to chat, but if it's something that you've ever, what I'm hoping is that maybe you get a chance to address some of the things that you haven't been asked before. Because
mm,
I guess I like to preface it with a little bit of why I asked the question. I don't just have everybody on and ask the question like I got nothing else to do. But I mean, you've been doing amazing. I mean, there's only other like two other people maybe one other person I can think of that's actually doing a bigger contribution to the awareness right now would be Cheryl. With the way that when they do their interviews, especially now that they do their longer format and then they offer the website stuff. But between the interview, the people that you choose to interview, and then the YouTube videos that you create with the description, I mean, the time and effort that goes into that,
mm.
that's a resource that's helping those individuals immensely, and it's helping the people who go to research about those individuals because you're coming up, and it's also inspiring a ton of people. I'm sure for people that go, oh, I like what this guy's doing, I wish I could do something like it, or I'm going to try, or oh, I don't like the way this guy's doing it, I'm going to do it better, right? So either way, we're winning,
Yeah.
and it inspires people that way. But then
Hmm.
at the same time, you've experienced some other things. You've gone around and done some things. So I'm sure you've spent way too much money than you should have going to places and experiencing things because you wanted to see if it was worth it. I'm not going to get into the good and bad. We all know there's good and bad and everything. But you've made, I'm sure, some decisions and you were like, oh man, that cost a lot of money and it really wasn't worth it. And that's the kind of stuff that most people are going to decide, okay, in the long run, there's not a lot of gain here. There's not a lot of stuff I haven't seen yet. It's about time to transition out. I've done plenty. I can say I'm done, and everybody's going to be fine with it. You didn't do
Right.
that, and I'm not saying you're not going to do that tomorrow. You got plenty of right to do that tomorrow, but that's why I asked the why. Like, there's all kinds of opportunities to stop along the way. You've had an opportunity to meet some people, I'm sure by now, who have either said to you, "Look, you can do it this way," or you just look at the way they're doing it and go, "Wow, they're making a lot of money by just slightly putting in the same amount of effort, just doing it in a different way than I am."
Mm,
Maybe flashlight reviews or something like that. But you've done enough to have opportunity to quit, and all the like you say, you don't have to feel bad about it. So what's the why? Like that's the reason I'm asking you the why, so that people don't think I'm just asking this as like a generic question to just anybody. This is a dude that's done a lot and has decided to continue doing this. And I don't know what kind of results you're getting from it, but I'll quit asking the question and let you answer it.
All right. So the why is when when I had the idea for the show, I guess I was looking for something for myself to do. I I've been listening to podcasts for 10 years, and I wanted to be a podcaster. So I'm like, I'm gonna start a podcast show, and I couldn't, I would take my laptop around my apartment and get underneath my blanket and go into a closet and try to get no sound and no audio and no extemporaneous noises and sounds, and I couldn't really do it. So I'm like, that seems to be a lot of work, and I don't know anything about working audio engineer and audio equipment. So that I kind of put that aside when when I saw couple karaoke. I get there's a whole, he doesn't drive, he's got all these people, he does the whole, oh, I'm gonna go, I'm running late for work, I gotta get some coffee, and oh my gosh, I run into the Foo Fighters, and then let's sing Foo Fighter songs, and I'm like, this is really ridiculous, but this guy gets to hang out with rock stars, and for me, when I think of the like the big name people that I want to have on the show, I think this is crazy and that's cool. I think of Ted Nugent, I think of Kid Rock, and I think of Hank Williams Jr. So to me, it kind of points back to I want to have some pro gun folks that are big name musicians, and I have to have these people on the show. Not that I don't appreciate the gun folks, but like those would be like if an angel came down and pranked her wand. I would love to ride around with Kid Rock and talk with Kid Rock about music and about guns and about freedom and all that sort of stuff. That would be unbelievable. But I started doing it. I guess I had some friends that I grew up in the Midwest, moved to Boston to go to college. I went back to the Midwest. I played in a band. I traveled around. I ended up back in the Midwest. I had a teaching job, part-time teaching job, and this is all within 2 years of getting out of college. And then I ended up back in Massachusetts with a teaching job. And I lived with some people who, speaking freely here, were liberal wackos. But I was young. I was in my 20s. I wanted to play in a band. I wanted to drink beer, and I wanted to watch girls dance. So guns weren't a thing. Like it wasn't an issue. Like it wasn't a deal. And after I lived with this family for 3 months. I ended up going to Europe with them in the summer of 1995. We went to Poland to teach conversational English to high school kids. And when I became a gun guy, I was about when I started when I got married and had a kid and bought a house, and I was about 30 when I started to pay attention to politics. At 30, 31, 32 is when I got a gun license and became a gun owner. I remember talking with I call them my surrogate family because they're not really my family, but there's three daughters I became good friends with, and the mom and dad are great people. When I became a gun guy, I was talking with their youngest daughter, and she's like, I knew you before you were in guns, so I know you're an okay guy, and I know you're not a Duck Dynasty guy, but like we're not really gun people, and gun people seem a little crazy and a little dangerous. And I was like, well, that seems a little nuts because we're just like everybody else. And I became a gun guy because I had this little 9-month-old boy that I needed to protect. And then I eventually ended up having a daughter, and I need to be able to protect my family. And that's what it's about. And I went through a stage where I wanted to be a hunter, and I bought a bunch of camouflage and did a hunter red class. And, I sit in the woods and go deer hunting and freeze my tail off. And I'm like, all right, this isn't for me, like hunting. They're like, oh, you got to pattern the deer and then go where the deer are. And I'm like, I get 3 hours on a Friday morning, and then I have to go to work. So I can't, that's not really an option. So hunting wasn't necessarily as much as I would try it. I couldn't really get into it. So then becoming a gun instructor, I just realized that gun folks are regular people. And that's really the mission statement, I guess, or part of the mission statement of what my show is. We're people. We're not crazy lunatics. We rarely drink blood from skulls of our enemies. We're just regular folks, and that's what I wanted to put out. Is say, hey, listen, you might think that these people are crazy because they're gun guys. This guy was the victim of a crime. This guy was robbed in his garage. This woman was a domestic violence survivor. So they're not crazy lunatic gun people that are, over the top through the government and, all that sort of stuff. They're just regular folks. And I think their stories need to get out, and people need to hear this stuff. So that's one of the things that really keeps me going. And with the path of James Yeager, this past week, I heard about this. I don't think I ever met him. I never had him on the show, but it just made me think. I'm like, oh man, there are so many more people that I want to have on the show, so I can get their story out and have more people learn about them. And I know with the circles that I run in, so Amanda Suffolk and I like to talk about this because we compare this to the Olympic rings. And, the red ring touches the blue ring, which is the green ring, but the red ring doesn't touch the green ring. And I probably have the colors all screwed up. But I know some people that are gun folks, and she knows people that are gun folks. You know people that are gun folks. But we don't all know the same people. So when you talk to someone else and you're like, hey, have you heard, I'm talking to Paul Lathrop. I'm like, who would be good to have on? Jared Yanis from Guns and Gadgets. He's like, I'm not sure who he is. I'm like, dude, he's got 300,000 people that follow him on YouTube, and he's always putting out content, like putting out 3 or 4 videos. He's like, I don't have time to keep up with that. Like, I don't know who he is. So you connect these rings together, and then you bring more people in so that your circle gets a little bit bigger and your ring gets a little bigger. One of the other things I wanted is when I was show and doing all the Toastmaster stuff, I was hustling, man. I had a job 5 days a week working as a teacher in a bunch of Catholic schools. I was teaching gun classes on the side, and I had to learn how to edit video. I know nothing about editing video, and my my going story is I'm a terrorist because I just wanted to learn how to fly the plane. Like, I want to know how I can put 3 cameras together and get the audio synchronized, and then I'm going to edit stuff, and I'm just going to, I've got 3 cameras. So when I'm talking, I put the camera, I cut I delete the clips of the other 2, and then that's all I do. So there's not a lot to starting to edit the video. And I've certainly learned a little bit here and there and added some things, and wanted to learn how to do some things as I go along. First, I'm like, I just how do I put these videos together, and how do I get this going? So that was all I wanted to do. And I just want to get the videos out and put shows out and have people on the show. And I wanted to expand my circle of friends, and I wanted to have more pro gun friends. And yeah, I just wanted to expand my own circle of friends. One of
Right.
the
No,
yeah.
go ahead.
So
No, go.
the other thing that keeps me going is, and this is really bad for me to know, it's bad for me to say, so I preface it, but I don't get whatever it is that I need to make me feel good about what I do. I don't get at my school job. I'm at the bottom of the totem pole. Band kids, I teach band. Forget their instruments. They don't know what day it is. I had a school last year that had remote learning one day and didn't tell me until I got to the school. I'm at the bottom of the totem pole, and when it makes, I get the feeling of being important when I do shows, and when I go to some place, and I know, I think it was Guns and Barbecue. Might have asked about if I was going to be at the Rod of Iron this year. I am going to be there. I think I'm going to MC the Concealed Carry Fashion Show with Amanda. But that's the stuff that makes me feel great. Like, hey, I go to this event and people make me feel cool. They want to come up and talk and have a picture, and hey, I watch the show and all that, and that's great. So what the recognition I don't get at school and at my day job, I get from doing riding shotgun. So I'm going to keep it going as long as I can.
Right on. I don't want to keep you hanging. So I appreciate, like I said, I gave you an open-ended answer and gave you time to extrapolate on it. And if you feel like something as we chat here, like, oh, I want to expand on it, feel free to interrupt me and go for it, because that's really the goal here, so that you get a chance to, have that. And I think it's neat. I don't know if am I the only one? I mean, you listen to the James Kalita thing. That's why I've listened to all of them. I think it's neat to get an idea. I think it adds to the authenticity of the individuals, and it gives us a better idea of what they might need or what they're getting out of it. So how we can help them, or how we can facilitate whatever their projects are.
Right.
That's the overall goal, I guess. So I appreciate that. So then a couple of the questions that came up, I'm trying also not to interrupt. My tendency is to interrupt typically if we're just having a conversation. I just like to interrupt and ask questions as you're bringing stuff up. But you brought up Ken Blanchard, awesome dude, one of the people that inspired me as well.
Oh yeah. So
Ken, a little bit more about he was your first guest, correct? How did that, or not your first guest, but your first 2A guest?
Yes. So when you have this ideas to do things, you gotta, what do they say? That test the theory, or proof of concept, or something like this. So I was like, well, I'm going to interview people. I had 2 GoPros that I bought off of Craigslist, and I had 2 suction cup mounts that I bought off Amazon, and I was up and going. Like, I'm going to do this, man. And I interviewed my mentor. His name is Dennis. I interviewed some local people. There's an instructor out in Western Massachusetts who's a buddy of mine that I interviewed. I interviewed one of the guys I used to play in a band with. I didn't really put that show out, but I just needed some practice. I needed to get some reps in. And so going back to, going someplace, going on a trip someplace, and wondering if the show is worth it. Somehow, to me, it's it. I had my high school band teacher told me, I wanted to be a successful and famous musician, and he said you got to pay your dues. So I was like, well, I'm going to pay my dues until something cool happens. So if if I have someone on the show and I've got to prompt them along and I've got to talk a little bit more, I just see that as paying dues. And then when you get somebody that's a pro at being interviewed and done this for a long time and got lots to talk about, dude, it's gravy. It really sit there. And there have been a number of times when I'm riding around with somebody and I'm hearing them talk and tell their, talk about this, talk about that. I'm just like, oh crap, I got to ask this guy a follow-up question. Like I'm part of this conversation too. I need to pay attention when I'm driving, but I need to get some questions as well.
So how did you? Was Ken Blanchard a target of
Oh, so Ken
opportunity?
Blanchard. Sorry. So Ken was one of these people.
You needed to cut your teeth. You did that,
Yes.
but now you were looking to kind of put in, like you say, pay your dues with an actual activist and
yes.
proof of
So
concept.
what I was, I started listening to Ken's show, probably 2010 or 2000. I started listening to podcasts around then. I think, God, I think I still had a BlackBerry back then, but podcasts were new, and I found the Urban
Because
Shooter.
there was no internet, or there was no high-speed internet. People aren't really maybe putting this two and two together, but in this era, internet was kind of slow, so that means there was no video on the internet. So audio was the way to get a lot of content quickly. You could download it and listen to it at your leisure for hours. Right?
Yeah, absolutely. So I would listen to, at the time he was calling it the Urban Shooter, and I guess he used to call it the Black Man with a Gun, and then it became the Urban Shooter, and then he went back to the Black Man with a Gun. So I was listening to Black Man with a Gun, and I was listening to the Gun for Hire, Anthony Calandro. And like you said before, you listen to these shows and you feel like you know these people because they're out there talking and spilling their story and spilling their guts and everything, and you think you get to know them. So I was like, I'm going to ask Ken Blanchard. He's only down in Washington. It's only 6 hours away. That's not horrible. I can do that. So I sent him an email. I'm like, hi, Ken, my name's Charlie. I'm starting this new show. It's Riding with Charlie. I'm going to interview people in the car. I've been a fan for a long time. I'd love to have you on the show. And he wrote back to me 2 hours later. And he's like, yeah, man, that sounds awesome. When do you want to do this? And I was like, oh my God. And I had a girlfriend at the time, and I was so excited. I was like, I'm going to go down to D. I'm going to interview Ken Blanchard. And I had to explain who he was. And so she's like, so let me see if I get this straight. You're going to go down to Washington, D.C., and you're going to drive around with this guy, and he's a black guy, and you don't know who he is, and he doesn't know who you are, and he knows you're a gun guy, and you know he's a gun guy? I'm like, yes. And she's like, that seems a little crazy. I'm like, I don't think so. I think this sounds awesome. And then after I heard from Ken, I was like, you know what? I looked on the map. I'm like, I'm going to have to go through New Jersey. I'm going to reach out to Anthony Calandro. So I emailed Anthony. I said, hey, my name's Charlie. I'm starting a new thing, Riding Shotgun with Charlie. I'm coming down to interview Ken Blanchard. I'd like to stop in New Jersey and interview you. And I didn't hear back from him. And I was like, all right, that's cool. He's got a business. He's a busy guy. And as I was following the Google Maps to drive from Massachusetts to DC, I'm driving on the Garden State Parkway, and I see all these towns that he talks about. And I pulled over into a rest area, and I found the Gun for Hire range, and it was, I don't know, 15 minutes away or something. So I went. I'm like, I'm going to stop in. I just want to say hi. I just want to meet Anthony Calandro. I did a gungram for him the year before, and I was playing a cigar, playing the trumpet, smoking a cigar, and shooting a gun at the same time. And so I went into Gun for Hire, and I sat down. I said, hi, my name's Charlie. I just want to say hi to Anthony. I'm a big fan of the podcast. And he popped his head out, and he's like, you're the guy that plays the trumpet and shoots a gun, right? I'm like, yeah, that's me. He's like, hold on a minute. And then he comes out. He's got a couple of T-shirts and a hat and stickers. He's like, here, this is for you. Like, I saw the video. I loved it. What are you doing down here? And I said, I'm going down to I'm starting a thing, calling it Riding Shotgun with Charlie. I'm going down to interview Ken Blanchard. And he's like, that's pretty cool. Tell the Rabbi. And I was like, did I just get the secret handshake? Like, this seems really weird to me. So I stood at the lobby, and I had the little angel on one side of my shoulder that said, "Tell him you sent him an email," and I had the devil on the other side that said, "Don't tell him he's a busy man." So I said, "You know what? Uh, I sent you an email, Anthony, and I wanted to have you on the show, but I didn't hear back from you." And he's like, "Yeah, we had something, and I've been really tied up." And then he says, "Here's what time are you going to be coming through here tomorrow?" And I said, "Probably dinner time." He's like, "Here's my phone number. Give me a call." So I drove down to DC, interviewed Ken. I drove back up to Jersey. I interviewed Anthony Colandro, and man, I was high. I was flying high. I thought I was the coolest guy ever. And I went back with these videos, and I'm like, okay, now I got to learn how to edit these videos and make this happen.
Did your mom? Well, I'm going to get into the how a little bit because that's the other reason I have you on. So if it's okay to,
Yeah.
kind of hijack the story, but I appreciate that. I think I do remember that. I didn't intentionally set that up, but um, that's awesome how that worked out. So when you're now, you've made the plunge, or you bit the bullet. Let's use a real pun over here. You bit the bullet. You called Ken Blanchard. You went down, talked to Anthony at the same time, got both interviews, come back. Now you've got raw footage. Did you even consider contacting somebody and saying, "Hey, do you edit? Can I bring these to you?" And did you have
Oh,
anybody like that in mind, or was it just now I'm going
I
to edit?
I had no idea who would do this. Like no idea. I'm like, I don't know how Dropbox works. The files are too big to email, because the video segments on like I use GoPros. I have the mini SD memory cards, and the segments of the videos are 17 minutes and 42 seconds long. And I didn't, and it would have like, number 101 was the first video, and then it'd be 1101. And the next one that's 17 minutes and 42 seconds was 2101. And I had no idea. Like, I'm like, there's only 17 minutes and 42 seconds of video. This is ridiculous. What happened? I know I talked to the guy for 45 minutes. I don't know. I don't know where the video is. And then load everything. I'm like, oh, okay, there it is. And I
So in
was,
other words,
since
the GoPro does something like a loop, and it just automatically cycles every 17 minutes or something.
it's, yes, I mean, I'm not a tech guy, so I always tell people I can check my oh, here's what I know about computers. I can check my email and look at porn, and that's all I really need to know, right?
Yeah.
um, the
But those are huge files too. When
Yeah.
the GoPros are super good quality, so they become large files to deal with them.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. So I didn't know, like, it took some time to figure that out. The software I was using, since I was using GoPros, was just the GoPro software. And I didn't know that you could synchronize the video by the audio. I had no
Oh,
idea how to do
interesting.
this. So I was legit I had a timeline, and I would segment of me talking, and I would drag it over, and then I would go to the other camera, because I started off with two cameras, and I would take the segment where the person was replying, and I would try to get them so they synchronized. And of course, there's two different videos, there's two different microphones, so the audio's not the same. And I'm like, this is a lot of work. And I swear to God, I spent, oh man, 8 or 10 hours like trying to do one 30-minute interview. I'm like, this is ridiculous. Like, there's got to
Is
be
this
an easier way.
couple of questions? So in other words, just to double clarify, when you're saying that the GoPro software, if you take two GoPros and record the same thing from two different angles or whatever, and then you take those two recordings and put them in your computer, the GoPro software will automatically sync up from the audio, sync them both up to where they're,
I
so you can
honestly
flip back.
I have no idea.
Oh,
Because
I thought that's what you said.
I
I was
had
just clarifying.
it's
Then I
no,
misunderstood.
I was going from, I'm taking the video and the audio from camera one, and then I would take the video and the audio from camera two, and I would put that in the timeline, and then I would go back to, all right,
Yeah,
well,
because that's what I do
where,
too. And then you just kind of
yeah,
wiggle it back and forth until it sounds right
oh
or
my
whatever.
God, and that was so much work. And then I interviewed, um, so it was
So now I guess
July.
the second part of my question was, did you go on YouTube or something and watch how to do it, or were you trying to figure it out on your own?
So I interviewed Ken and Anthony in July of
Okay.
2016, and I reached out. So a little bit more of the backstory is, I was friends with this gal back in the Midwest in the mid '90s, and she ended up moving to Minneapolis. Her husband was robbed at gunpoint for 20 bucks outside of their condo, and his story is in Lessons from Unarmed America by Mark Walters and Rob Pincus. And I didn't know I didn't know this, so I reached out to my friend. It was through Facebook, and then it's 20 years since we talked. So it's, hey, how you doing? Good to see you. Good to, and guns are a sticky issue. But anyway, I ended up finding out, I said, hey, I'm a gun guy, and I'm, gun instructing. And she's like, oh, my husband's a gun guy. And I'm like, oh, that's pretty cool. And she's like, yeah, I'm at gunpoint. I'm like, whoa, wait a second. You got to tell me about this. And then I find out he was in Lessons from Unarmed America. So I said, I got these GoPro cameras. I keep them in a toolbox. I can take the show anywhere. I just need a car, and I got the suction cups, and I got the cameras, and I'm good to go. So I went out to Minneapolis for a weekend, and her husband's name was Lee. And Lee says, listen, if you come out this weekend, I'll be at the Minnesota State Fair. Mark Walters is coming. You can have Mark Walters on the show. I can do the show. We can have Mark on the show. And then there was another guy. His name was Peter Johnson from Archway Defense. And so you can have Peter on the show too. And I'm like, great, because he was like an air marshal and had some cool training stuff. And he was the guy that I talked to, and he's like, you can put them together on Adobe Premiere. And I'm like, what's Adobe Premiere? And he's like, oh, it's this software, and you pay 35 bucks a month and you can have access to using it. And I'm like, well, that sounds pretty cool. So I took the video home and I subscribed to the Adobe. You don't buy it anymore. You buy a subscription to use. And I called him up and I'm like, how do I put the videos together? So he's like, oh, you just highlight this, and then over here you have a pull down for synchronize, and you just let it synchronize. And I'm like,
oh, so it was in Adobe that you were able to figure out how to get the audios to synchronize.
Yes. And I was like, this is so much
easier.
Well,
that's even better, because I was just clarifying before. So if you're saying that you'll have to tell me how to do that, because I use Adobe also. So that'd be awesome.
Oh, it makes things, you got to know how to do it, but it makes things so much easier. And,
yeah.
And then you can, after I have the video synchronized, I do each of the 17 minutes and 42 seconds, camera 1, camera 2, camera 3. And I pull those, put those on the timeline, and then I set them together, and then I move them together on the timeline. So they puzzle piece in, basically. They're all connected and they're all synchronized and everything's fine. And then there's a lock feature where you can lock the audio, and so I have my logo that I use on the screen, and the logo just goes on the top of everything. And I move that down to the right-hand corner, and I lock that. So it cut every time I make a cut on the video. And then I use the audio from the third camera, which I call it camera 3. It's the camera that's between, it's the camera in the center of the car, because I'm like, that's going to get the consistent audio, and it's not going to be more me and less them and anything like that. And I lock the audio, the camera on me, the camera on the other people. I leave the other camera, I mute the audio from the camera on me and the camera on them, and I use the audio from the middle camera, and then I lock it so I can't cut it up, and then I just go through and, I'm talking, I put the camera on me. They're talking, I put the camera on them. We're talking together, I put the camera between the two of us.
So a couple of questions. Going to 3 cameras, and you just don't use the audio from the 3 cameras, right? I mean, you still record from all 3 in case there's an issue, so you got one bad one for backup at least?
Absolutely. So each of the cameras get video and audio, and then I just mute camera 1 and camera 2, and I go from 3.
Software. Like on the software, you just tell that one to ignore it. Yeah, I got you. Okay, there's making it clear. And then the choice to start using 3 cameras, was that a choice? Did somebody recommend it? Was it like,
oh my gosh,
thing?
It was
You're a musician. No. How much of the video stuff is a creative thing for you? Like, how much of that is it?
So I do consider the show my baby, and I've had people say, well, you should get someone else to edit it because it's too much work and blah blah blah, and I'm like, either you have time or money, and I don't have money. I have time, so I put the time into editing. Plus, it's my baby, and I don't want someone to tell me that my baby is ugly. I don't want someone to say, well, we're going to do this because we like this instead. I've learned that I can zoom in. Like, this is something I've learned from working with the software, with Adobe. I can zoom in, and when the other person says something that I think is important, I zoom in and make their face bigger, and hoping it gives them a little bit more impact to what they're saying. I'll leave that to someone else. So I edit all this stuff myself.
You know what a J cut and L cut is?
Oh God, I think I did try to take a video editing class on Udemy.
I'm not
And,
all super good. It's just that it's basically where you got your audio.
oh
and you
yeah,
got
yeah, yeah.
It's just where you shift where the audio and video, so it's not a parallel cut, like up and down cut. So maybe the
Yes.
audio starts from one person, because I'm thinking in your situation, I don't know if you use them or not, because you edit pretty good, and I don't know if you're using this and I just don't notice it. But it would be like if somebody's saying something, but then you reacted or they reacted, it would be like
Right.
watching them but hearing you, but then you said something funny. Anyway, it would be that kind of thing. I don't know if you get into all that.
Yeah, no, I do know what you're talking about when you say it like that. And I don't think I don't think that pertains to my video. Like, if I was doing a
That's a lot
movie
of
and I wanted to
yeah.
if I wanted to cut scenes and start one scene with the audio, I don't do that. I just keep the audio going. I've had some people, I've kind of noticed that people talk in about 20 to 25-second segments. It's not always the case, of course, but that seems to be when it's good. Even if they're staying on the same sentence, they'll talk for about 20 seconds, and that's when they're going to take a breath. And then if I feel like I need to switch to another camera, but I don't want, like, I remember watching the Bourne Identity movies, and I had a headache. I was dizzy after watching those movies because everything was just moving around the whole time. I'm like, dude, I can't take that. I'm an old man. Like, I get seasick watching that movie. So I don't like to do the cuts too quick, but but yeah, switching cameras, I don't want to do it too fast.
Okay, so going to the question about the 3 cameras again, is that something that, again,
yeah.
like, something like, you think of your cameras and your audio as like music and audio recording, or do you think of this as a separate type of art and skill?
I guess it's a separate art and skill. I don't know if it. I mean,
In
I've
other
had
words, not like you don't dig it like you would if you were. I'm assuming because you're a musician that you sit around playing music as a recreation thing. You're not editing 3 different ways just because you enjoy editing and then picking one that seems to work. Okay.
No, I just sit down and I'm like, all right, everything's, it takes time for the computer to do all this stuff. So a lot of
I deal with that a lot. That's actually interesting. That I would probably be a lot more creative if my computer was actually like a scalpel instead of like a big crayon. Like, I'm constantly waiting for the computer to do stuff. I get sick of stuff. I have to walk away and come back. I'm not doing this. Anyway,
I would like to schedule my time better so that I do, instead of not binge watching, but binge editing, that I could sit down and do an hour and say, okay, I've done an hour, 15, minute, hour and a half or something. And then say, okay, I'm done. Like, I got to go do something else. I want my day, get some other things done. But a lot of times it seems like I'm like, okay, I got a Saturday afternoon. I'm going to sit down. I'm going to edit a show.
Editing's a chore then. It's not, I got the unit for myself. I'm going to pour some wine and put on some music and edit because it's my favorite thing.
No, it's not my favorite. It's not my favorite thing, but started is the hardest part. Like, once I'm going, I'm like, you know what? It's not so bad. Why do I fight it all the time? Why do I not want to do this? Not that I don't want to do it, but
I like knowing how to use it. For me, it's like a guitar. Like, I like the idea of knowing how to play guitar. I just don't want to have to ever practice. I just want to be able to do it.
Dude, as a music teacher, nobody wants to practice. No, nobody, man. So the 3 cameras. I would watch Carpool Karaoke, and since I'm like, ooh, they're using GoPro. Well, what I would do is I would watch Carpool Karaoke, and I'm like, how many cameras do they have in the car? And then after 2 years, like, when I finally learned that I could zoom in, oh, they probably have less cameras than I think. Like they probably have one on the like I said, I have one on
Well,
the
when you got a
one on the
4K
passenger, one on.
camera, you can zoom in to one person and it's like a separate camera, right? Like that kind of
Yeah,
trick.
absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I did a show with somebody. I got the 3 cameras set up and I had them turn the camera on. So the on button's on the front, and then the or the power button's on the front, and then the on and off button to start the
It's like
video
an old
is on the
camera on
top.
top.
Yeah. So I had them push the button on the top, and I did not tell them to put their thumb on the bottom. So they pushed the button on the top and it pushed the camera down. So instead of having a video with a good frame of them, I got from the middle of their face on down. And I'm like, I can't use that whole camera. So what I did was I would have the camera on me, the camera on us. And when this person was talking, I would zoom in and then move the
Like crop.
yeah, I would crop it so it was just them in the camera, so it looked
I
like the
remember that.
camera
That was
was right
one of
in
the
front of
early
them.
ones, right? That was a while ago.
Oh my gosh, this was a couple years ago. Yeah.
Yeah, I remember that one. I think you might have mentioned it, but you could also tell just because it kind of resolution got weird or whatever. But yeah, it's still.
Yeah, there's another thing that I was interviewing someone last year, and I didn't notice that like there was a smudge on the camera, and I'm like, oh no. So
Enough that
now I
it
can't.
made it didn't work.
It's no, it was enough that I noticed it, but not enough that it was distracting. If it was really just like, all right, well, I got to work with 2 cameras, so that'll be that. But yeah,
So
I
3
would
is
see
sort
the
of, gives you an extra. In other words, like
some safety
the
net. Yeah,
redundancy.
yeah. The camera
And then
that's
it also puts the one in the middle gives you that audio that's you got for like
that's
your good audio. Your other 2 are redundancy for audios, and then the 3 cameras are kind of you've always got 2 cameras pretty much.
yeah, 2 to 3.
What
The
about
camera
I'll let you finish. Go ahead.
the camera that I got that was really for funsies was I got another GoPro to put on the hood of my car to get me driving places, and I'm like, that could be good for having some B-roll, for doing something else with. You know what I mean? Sometimes we talk about things that are happening, if somebody cuts us off or strange happens. So it's nice to have that, but part of that was I want to have video of me driving in a bunch of different places around the country, like driving in big cities and stuff.
Yeah, like the
I thought
dash
that'd
cams. I've been
yeah,
mansplaining the dash cam idea. Yeah, I mean, it seems obvious. Like you need to have a dash cam, but you put that outside the car, like on the hood of the car with a second.
yeah. I put it on the hood of the car and it gets where we drive.
So
I did this. I found I bought a
wide angle dash cam. The GoPros are wide angle, so you get really good video like that.
oh yeah, I mean it gets both sides of the roads and probably a good, I don't know, 15 20 feet on the sides of the roads. I found one. So I have a couple of extra backup GoPros that I don't really use, because I have them just in case I need them. But one of them I bought had some like a tall suction cup mount. And so what I did at one point is I put that on the side of the door, and I aimed the camera at the wheel well of the tire, so it looked like a 1970s cop show.
Yeah, that's awesome.
I thought
Did it work?
it did.
Yeah.
I think the camera crapped out after like 3 or 4 minutes, but I got a little bit of footage like that.
I do the thing with my I do everything with my phone. So I just do the thing where I roll down the window, stick my arm out the window, and hold it down by the ground. So I try to get that angle. It always is crooked or something, but I like that angle. Mm-hmm. So I was going to ask, do you play around with cameras at all? I know that you travel. I kind of talked about at SHOT Show with you, and just to kind of touch on that again, like you obviously you got the 3 GoPros. You're not doing anything special with audio. You don't have a 360 camera or any other kind of cameras that you're screwing around with.
I don't know. I'd like to honestly. I'd like to improve my audio. I'd like to get microphones on people. I'd watch Seinfeld's Comedians and he's riding around with Eddie Murphy, and they're in a convertible, and it's amazing audio. He's also got $800 million, so he can afford some good audio. But I bought a one of those little portable 4-track recorders, and I've tried using mics on people, but I have not really worked it out.
That's what I was
You know,
going to suggest. I know people that have used, you're effectively like a digital version of an old micro cassette recorder, right? Except it's all
yes,
fancy and it,
yeah,
and then they have the lapel mics or whatever they're called now.
yeah. I never know where to put them, and I don't want to. Like, I put one. The first time I tried it, I thought it would be pretty simple. I'm like, all right, plug the mics in, and we put the mics in under our shirts, and it recorded me, but it didn't record the other person. And so I'm like, all right, I'm going to deal with this later. And then, a year later, I'm like, all right, I should probably do something about this. And I tried it and couldn't get it to work. So
I got it figured out already, dude. The visors, the sun visors. As long as they're not sticking them forward because of the sun or whatever, they're like
oh,
right there.
right, maybe yeah,
And they,
maybe I should try.
some people do it there. Awesome. So the thing is, everybody's always talking about all this stuff in real life. When you're going places, stuff is fragile. Every once in a while, the stuff you buy is rugged. So GoPros are fairly rugged, but mics and stuff, I don't know. I never owned them, but every cassette recorder I've had has been pretty fragile compared to travel, right? And it's off-sided luggage and stuff. So, and then just weight and everything else. And then as far as GoPros, how many batteries you got? You got 3
Oh my
GoPros
God.
batteries for them.
I think I have 4 sets of batteries, and
So
I never.
like 4 for each one.
Yeah, I have like 3 or 4. I think, yeah,
So
I'm
you're
going to say I have
talking
4.
handfuls of batteries. Those batteries are crazy tiny. Like unless they're the same as mine, I'm guessing. I have an old GoPro 3. I'm guessing it's like my little tiny,
They're
smaller than a matchbox.
Yeah, I've got a couple GoPro 3s. They're about the same size. They're a little thicker, but they're flatter.
Okay, so yeah, phone battery. So it doesn't take up a lot of room, but you basically have to have a bunch, right? Like just in case they go
Yeah.
out, or if you're going to do more
Oh my
than one
gosh, yeah. So
interview.
so when I go to when I go to SHOT Show or GRPC or something, and I have all these people that want to be on the show, and I'm like, yeah, I can only do like 3 shows, and then I got to recharge the batteries. Like the batteries only last so long.
And do GoPros have options to plug into cigarette lighters? Is that a thing?
I don't know if they do or not. I'm going to say they do, but I haven't looked into it. Like
Okay.
when I watched the show on Seinfeld, the GoPros he has have wires that come out and go someplace, and I don't know where the hell they go.
Yeah,
So
see, that's
I
the thing.
assume there's some sort of
I've done
battery
a
pack.
couple of things with people that broadcast, and like we're using StreamYard, this Canadian software that charges $25 a month for me, and I can do cool stuff like put Gizzards' thing up here, right, and move our stuff around. I could share the screen if I wanted to bring up something on the screen or whatever. But some of the software that they use to broadcast, it'll pull those GoPros are super good. So it'll pull the HDMI off of the GoPros and then probably record it to some kind of really expensive version of software that TV uses. You know what I mean? Like those people, they're fluent in television tech. So whatever we're fluent in YouTube tech, they're fluent in television tech. So I'm guessing those GoPros are just HDMI'd to some computer software in a laptop somewhere.
Yeah,
But for
I'm
us,
sure
it would just be run the laptop or run the GoPros into cards, let them record onto cards, and then later on take the cards out and put them in this computer software. Let's see. So without getting too much into tech, then maybe if it was a different kind of thing, we chat more about the tech part of it. Did I scroll down here? That's what happened as I started writing. I'm going to just kind of, because we're getting into the hour part, and I do appreciate again that you're on, joining us on in the middle of the night like this. For people that are listening in the future, we record this at midnight Eastern. So Charlie's on Eastern chat, unless you're traveling. I don't think you're traveling.
No, I'm on the East Coast.
I appreciate that. Is it difficult to decide who to have on? Do you get too many requests, or is it, I'm sure your time's limited when you're at a place like Gun Rights Policy. I mean, that's a lot of targets and only X amount of hours. And
Right.
You want to go to the event to some extent, I'm sure.
The last few years, well, when we go to GRPC and it's in person, I get there Thursday night. I do AmCon on Friday. Friday night's a social. Saturday speeches all day. Saturday night's a social. Sunday speeches in the morning, and then everyone's done at 1 o'clock or so on Sunday, and they're like, "Hey, yeah, let's go have a drink, let's go catch up, let's." And I'm like, "All right, I gotta go. Like, I don't have time to hang out and talk because I'm interviewing this person at 1 o'clock, and I get this person at 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock. So I'll catch you guys for dinner."
So you
And
stack them up on Sunday.
yeah, I try to. I mean,
Typically.
if I can squeeze somebody in. If I can squeeze somebody in during another time, I absolutely will do that. But I don't want to run out of, again, I don't want to run out of battery power. So I will, I guess the big criteria is I want to have someone that has something to, has a story. They have something they can contribute. I've had my local friends are like, "Oh, my dad's into guns." I'm like, "Okay, that's cool. Well, you should have him on the show." I'm like, "What does he do?" "Well, he likes to shoot." Okay. So I'm like, so I try to get a half hour out of people. And your father likes to shoot. Um, does he make guns? Was there a home invasion? Was he a competitive shooter? Was he in the Olympics in the 70s? Like, you got to give me something more than that. So I want people to have some sort of a story about either why they get into guns, or, I interviewed Gabby Franco, and she's got she was a competitive shooter in Venezuela, and then she moved here. Yeah, I want to have some sort of story. I don't want it to be like, well, oh, you should talk to my uncle's a cop. Okay, that's cool. What does he do? Well, he drinks a lot and carries a gun. Okay, that doesn't make him a gun guy, and that doesn't mean he's got any good stories. He's probably got stories because he's a cop. Might not be good at telling them. So, like, I don't do the pre-show. For me is when we get in the car and I say, okay, here's the cameras. If there's anything that you want to talk about, let me know. Otherwise, I try to do research on everybody and just kind of let the conversation flow.
So I was mentioning at the beginning of the show that you interview people, but you do if the interview with the person is insightful and entertaining and like useful to the person who listens to it, the written stuff and the video, the description of the video, accumulating all that data about the individual is something that literally no one does for themselves. It just doesn't happen. So you're creating something that most of the people haven't. I mean, you know this because you just can't go copy and paste it from somewhere. So people don't realize the amount of effort Charlie's putting into that description all the time. You're creating that, you're putting it down on a channel that's growing. So you're not just putting it down, in the back closet of YouTube. You're putting it down, as close to the front page of YouTube as you can. And then, to being the second largest search engine, it's creating it accessible. It's making it the people who often have, a website or they're affiliated with an organization. It's, putting all their information into one spot so that it, again, researchers, people that are looking it up are going to find it, but then again, they're finding it. They're not having to keep going. So all of that stuff is extremely useful. So I appreciate that.
Well, let me. Here's the story with that.
Okay.
In 2019, I won the Blogger of the Year award at Gun Rights Policy Conference, and I ran around for 2 days, and I'm like, I got Blogger of the Year, and write a word. So that's how I roll, right? And then I ended up, I met Freddie Real from AmmoLand, and I ended up coming back from GRPC that year, and I was hanging out with some friends, and I'm like, dude, you should parlay that into something cool. And I'm like what? And they're like, well, what if you, did the show all around the country? And so I wanted to do this thing where I took 2 months and I traveled around the country and put out 2 shows a week, and like legit just lived in hotels and drove from Massachusetts out to Seattle, down to San Francisco, across the South, hit some places in the Mid-South or something, hit Denver. And I thought that would have been a really, really cool thing to do. But again, that takes money. So I'm like, well, I gotta get sponsors and blah, blah, blah. So anyway, I ended up talking to Freddie Real and said, listen, this is what I'm doing. And, would you be interested in putting the show on? And he says, yeah, it sounds great. I need 600 words for our SEO, right? For the search engine optimization. So I'm like, well, what do you mean? And he's like, you got to write a show description. And I'm like, oh God. So, the formula for that is, how did I meet the person? How did we, did they reach out to me? Did I reach out to them? Have we been running into each other? Blah, blah, blah. And then the next few paragraphs are, what we talk about. I started doing the timestamping to help with YouTube stuff. I get what I call the favorite quotes, and I really find a lot of inspiration from hearing people and how they how they overcame something, how they made it through some hurdles. They had this difficult time, and their friends didn't they like what they didn't think they were doing was good and cool, and then all of a sudden they something amazing happened for them. So I have a section it's 5 or 6 sentences, and it's just the favorite quotes. And so I watch I live through the show obviously, and then I go back and edit the show, and then once it's on YouTube, I go back and I watch it again and get all the timestamps, and I write the show description, and then I put links for them and for the SAF, and to find listen to the show on podcast form and stuff. And so I try to, Freddie says he needs 600 words for SEO, so that's when I'm like, all right, I got to start writing stuff about the show as well.
Okay,
And
well, that's I guess where I started from. I was asking, I guess I got long-winded there and got off tangent, but I was asking, do you write, it sounds like you write the description after you have the conversation with them, but it sounded like when you talked about it, you also research them ahead of time. So it's
sure,
sort of
yeah.
a both. And you said those for
I
AmmoLand?
I do, yeah. So AmmoLand was good about putting the shows out, and then I was already doing the show, so they like the old shows aren't on AmmoLand, but they left it up to me for the last few months, and I wasn't sure how to work everything on the website. So I talked to somebody, and he's like, here's how you do this, here's how you do this, here's how you do this. So this past week I sat down, I put a movie on, and I'm like, all right, I'm going to dig up all the YouTube links, I'm going to dig up all the show descriptions, and I'm going to put them in on the website for AmmoLand. And I'm like, them, and AmmoLand's got them, and when they put them out, they put them out. Like my work is done. When you put them out, you put them out.
Well, that's tremendous effort. And again, you know how much effort you put into there. If you would have done that same amount, I don't know if you know this, now you know, but I'm telling you, but if you would have done that same amount of effort, Charlie would have spent that amount of time doing that on holsters or stupid red dot optics or some kind of grip that's new, or on a coating that people put on slides or barrels, some kind of magazine follower, like you could have, that would have been more lucrative. So again, I appreciate that.
Oh, sure.
You're doing all that effort, and now that I hear why, I mean, I didn't know. Maybe you've mentioned that before, but I never put two and two together. But again, AmmoLand is not a small entity, so the fact that you're getting that information not just on the YouTube description, but then additionally up on the AmmoLand distribution is awesome. And there's a lot of people that look at AmmoLand because they are worried about the new optic or the whatever grip angle or whatever.
Oh, sure. And I about a year or so ago, Freddie and I were talking about, hey, well, maybe you can make some other videos for us. And I'm like, I live in occupied territory, so all the cool things, I can't buy a Gen 5 Glock. I can't, there's certain, we have in Massachusetts, we have guns that we can't get from dealers. So unless I was whatever associated with the dealer, there's a bunch of guns that I don't have access to, and I don't know enough about Cocobolo grips and oh God, what is it, stippling that people do? I'm like, that seems a little ridiculous. But my deal with shooting is I like to squeeze the trigger and make the gun go bang and put a hole in paper or bust a clay. Like I just want to squeeze the trigger and make the gun go bang. So reviewing things is not. It doesn't interest me. I used to, I tell people that going to a gun show to me is very much like going to a strip joint. There's lots of things that I'd like to put my hands on and nothing I'm going home with. So why do I want to frustrate myself with that? Getting the gun magazines. This is cool. This is great. This is a review. This is a gun I'm not going to buy. So watching a review, reading a review doesn't do anything for me. So I couldn't tell you the cool red dots and, what was the oh my God, the new ammo that came out.
Mm-hmm. The defensive stuff or whatever.
Yeah, a lot of the 30 super or whatever.
I'm going to call it like the consumer stuff. I hear you. I'm not a big fan of just watching consumerism for consumer's sake. Some of it's by necessity. I mean, I'm okay with the generations having their own brands and, evolution of technology and things moving on. That's fine. I'm just not interested in paying attention to every incarnation of it necessarily. But
sure.
What I'll talk about with the gun shows, just a different perspective on gun shows. And this is something that, again, I don't know anybody you got to be interested in this kind of stuff too. But I would call it's if you're going to a gun show for that new stuff, it is pretty boring. But I go to gun shows for the old stuff and for the stories and the people that you meet. I'm not really a people watcher, but I appreciate just understanding who all's out there. And you'll see some mixing up. You'll see people that are like, oh, your grandpa did this. Yeah, your grandpa carried this. Or your grandma built this. Your grandma was, at the factory making this. And that kind of stuff gets handed down. And then what's cool is that, you're not going to be able to buy all that stuff necessarily at a gun show. But when you can hang out, I just go to a gun show and hang. Like I like, especially if you're creating content. So you can go to a gun show and just do like a NPR type of, this is what it was like. If you think of it that way, I'm just going to go to a gun show and experience it. And I'm going to do a narration of what I learned at the gun show this weekend. And you might find out that like, oh, somebody likes these things because their parents knew something about it, or maybe they like it because of their wife did something. You hear all these different stories. Because here's the thing, everybody at a gun show, just like at a swap meet, they're bored off their nuts. They're just sitting there watching everybody walk by, not buying the stuff at their table. So if you stand in front of them at their table and talk to them, it looks like somebody's buying something from their table, and more than likely somebody's going to come up, and if you're polite and you walk away as soon as somebody's there to buy, you let them sell a couple of things and then just hang out with them, you'll get all kinds of cool stories. You give somebody a cup of coffee if they've got something on the table, like let's say you're into 1911s or Garans or something, bring them a cup of coffee or whatever's appropriate, bag of Doritos, whatever it looks like they want, and just something, and or buy something off their table, and then ask them, hey, can you tell me about these? I'd like to own one, but I can't, and I'd like to. Most of the time they'll talk your ear off, right? But here's the thing: now you go to the range and you're boom, 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 and now you can walk up to somebody and go, I was at a gun show and so told me that this and that, and they're like, you talked to so and so? She's my best friend, or she's my neighbor. This is one of her old guns. Here, shoot it. So I just like that element of. But you got to be down for hanging out and
oh sure, yeah.
But it's sort of like cars or something. If you look at a car show and go, oh, I can't buy none of these cars, I can't drive none of these cars. But some people just like to talk about the engines or the paint jobs or where they drove their cars. There's all that elements to it. All right, so
that's cool, man. No, that's good stuff. I do want to say that. I do want to say this, like I don't want to get too far away from writing the show descriptions. You actually said to me at one point, you're like, hey man, this is really good stuff, because you've got written stories on whatever, few paragraphs on all of the people that are on the show, and you're documenting all of these people, and I'm like, that's a really cool way to look at it, because I never looked at it before. Like, I'm here like, okay, like where am I going next, and who can I have on the show, and when can I put the show out, and all that kind of stuff. But looking at it from that aspect is really, I'm like, yes, important. Like, how come I didn't have James Yeager on the show? Like, how come my path didn't intersect with him, and when's it going to intersect with this person and that person? How can I get this guy on the show? How can I get this gal on the show? That really made me look at things a little bit differently and see a different value for what it is that I'm doing and putting out.
You've seen Full Metal Jacket before, the movie Full Metal Jacket?
I do. I enjoy it until Arlie Ermy dies, and then I'm like, all right, then now it just feels like a regular war movie.
Well, but that movie, isn't that if I'm remembering it right, that's the movie about the reporter, and pretty much the whole time.
Oh no, that was Good Morning Vietnam with Robin Williams.
No,
right?
Not that one. No. Well, I mean, I guess it's similar to that, but no, I'm thinking of the one where the guy's got the camera and he's pretty much there taking pictures of the whole thing. I thought that was Full Metal Jacket.
I don't think that's Full Metal Jacket. Full Metal Jacket is about the two guys that go in, and then Arlie Ermy gives them a hard, busts their cookies through basic training, and then they go to Vietnam.
I get the impression of you as either the rock and roll reporter who's going on tour with everybody and getting the behind the scenes.
I love that.
After the show and hanging out with them and whatnot, and then or the I was going to say embedded reporter who's going in. Although that's a little bit more like, somebody who's not affiliated. So I'd say it's more like a musician who's going in and hanging out and just then, maybe, who I could use? How about Hunter S. Thompson? It's like you're Hunter S. Thompson hanging out, interviewing people, doing your thing. So maybe not that wild, but you're that thread through the Second Amendment and pretty much gun industry, depending on where you take it or what. But Second Amendment advocates for sure. So yeah, I mean, you're definitely creating a resource there, and there's plenty of ways you can develop it or whatever. You continue to use it.
Yeah, I love it. I've had a couple people reach out to me, and they said, "Hey, listen, I'm having so and so on the show. Have you had them on your show? And could you send me the link because I want before they're on my show." I'm like, "Oh my God, I love that."
I do that. Every single time I have somebody on my show, I send them to listen to your interview with them because it's such a complete interview with them. At least as far as their Second Amendment activism, it's not like you spend 3 hours with them, which I try not to do, but I end up doing it, which is a different thing, right? And that would be great, but then the person wouldn't have a consumable understanding of the project or the people that you're interviewing. And you're doing it for people that are value. I mean, anybody could do it for like the different optic people, and you'd get paid. Like somebody would pay you to listen to people talk about optics or the red dot or whatever, and they'd be people that are paid by the company to do that, and you would be doing it in that way. But anyway, much appreciated. The next question, I have a couple of questions. I guess unless I'm kind of all over the place here because I'm watching the time. But go ahead.
Yeah, so DJ Play says that is Full Metal Jacket. Joker is the protagonist and the journalist, and Rafterman is the photographer. So you were right.
Okay, I thought that I was remembering something about at least the concept that there was somebody who was narrating the movie and all the weird stuff was happening, but they were in it. They weren't just watching it and like showed up. They were enlisted. They were in it, and they were going through it. And that's you're an activist. You're doing it, and at the same time, you're there with the camera and the documenting it as it's going there, which is, it's more than that, because like an Army reporter, you're also kind of giving intelligence to the group as it's moving so that people know what's being taken care of and who's doing what, and that can be useful when people are deciding what they're going to do. All right, so if I have, like I say, I know I appreciate it. It's late, and probably because it's late, I'm going all over the place on tangents and stuff. So if this isn't the perfect interview, definitely, have you been interviewed before? I know that as an interviewer, people might take it for granted.
Yeah, I've been on. Yeah, I mean, I've been on. Gosh, I've been on with Amanda. I've been on with Cheryl Todd a couple times.
Well, I'm going to recommend the Gun Freedom Radio interview then. So I'll link to that one for sure. If I haven't already, I may have. That'll be what I'll recommend as far as getting to know more about Charlie and his projects, because we didn't even talk about Gun Grams hardly at all. We didn't talk about the
instructing
project you're doing with Matt.
Oh,
I never
Matt,
think about an instructor. That's what you do as a real job. I guess I only see what you do online or whatever. But what can I think of it now? I wrote it down.
Matt with Meet the Pressers.
Meet the Pressers. Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah, we don't have a real title for that. It was one of these things where he was like, "Hey, listen, you're a pretty busy guy. You've talked to a lot of people. Matt's partner for the show for Meet the Pressers, Clint Macro, was hired by the USCCA, so he's got other obligations, and so Matt's like, hey, I'm going to have some people sit in with me and co-guest host, but he says, I think we should do a show together. And I'm like, okay, well, what do you mean? He's like, let's have some of the favorite people you've had on, some of the favorite people he's had on his show, and we do it on StreamYard. We were in the spring, we were doing it regularly, but things happen over the summer and people get busy, and he's traveling around the country teaching classes. And but yeah, it's I know we have both of it. We put the links in the shows on both of our on YouTube, our YouTube channels.
Yeah, I think that's innovative for one, that you're sharing it. There's people that have shared channels. They wouldn't let us share channels for a while. Now StreamYard is letting us share like hosting of these live things, which is a cool way to kind of get a collaborative project with 2 YouTube channels. So that's cool off the bat. But then the fact that you're bringing people back that you've both already interviewed is epic, because no one's ever doing that. No one, it's definitely appreciated. So I don't know if get enough feedback on that, but it's definitely appreciated, both for the individuals, I'm sure, so that they can elaborate on what they've got going on, and then so that those who are following them and supporting them have more idea of what the scope of what they're doing or what they might need, how to support them more effectively.
Yeah,
Okay, so again, trying to keep an eye on the time and not keep you all night. I do want to have a couple of questions before we end it, because again, you're kind of you are in a unique position, but you're, compared to the people I've had on, you're definitely in one of the more unique positions to answer this, the last one here. But the first one, we barely touched on it, but one of the things that you've helped with and that you're involved with is the 2A fashion shows with Amanda Suffolk. And my question is an open-ended one. What do you think the impact is of 2A fashion shows, and what's your experience been with the emceeing of it?
Amanda is great, and she's always fun to work with. She is she's certainly more of a type A personality. I think I'm somewhere between a minus and a B plus, maybe. So she wants to make sure everything goes really smooth. I think they're really cool to have. I think they do have an impact on people, because people, particularly people that are new to firearms and people that want to carry, because in my mind, as a guy that carries for, I hope I don't have to use it for self-defense, but I'm not being a hunter or competitive shooter. I carry for personal protection. If somebody's new to this, they need to find ways that are going to carry for them, or that ways that are going to work for them to carry. And I think the fashion shows are a fun way to do that. Whether it's the filster holster, the inside the waistband holsters, or the ankle holsters, or the off-body holsters, there's a huge market of products that people don't know about. There was a woman here last Christmas in Massachusetts that she was going through her purse. She's at the self-checkout at the Walmart, going through her purse, had a gun in her purse, gun went off. Gun went off, didn't hurt anybody, but a round came out of the gun, shot out of her purse. And you see the comments on social media about this, and people are like, she needs to lose her gun license, and they need to take her kids away from her. And I'm like, they don't need to take their kids away from her, and she might need to take a class. Guns are expensive, and purses are expensive. If she knew that she could buy an Uncle Mike's holster for $15 and sew it on the inside of her purse so that nothing got on the trigger guard, that would be great. So getting out to those kinds of people, I think it's really an invaluable thing, and it's a fun way to do it. And I don't know if enough people take them seriously, but it's a fun way to get together with a bunch of people that are pro-gun folks and show off all these different products.
Right on. Yeah, I think it really normalizes stuff too. Just being able to say we've got that in the inventory of stuff that.
Yeah, and so are started by women, because women have different body types than men do, and they carry in different places, and the guns are going to poke them in different places. So it's really cool. I had one of the interviews I really enjoyed was having Dean Adams. Oh my gosh, Anna Taylor. I had her on the show, and she, like, domestic violence, single mom, 4 kids, had $200 and decided to put a holster together. And she took her last $200 to put it into her holster. It worked out well for her. So, she's got a bunch of products, and she's all over the country, and she's supporting a bunch of, the fashion shows and the DC Project and a bunch of other things.
Oh, dude, I didn't even think about that aspect of it. But I mean, I've from just going to SHOT Show, I know that there's a difference and an increase in the amount of female-owned and female-focused, stuff in the industry of all kinds, mostly holsters and whatever. But I didn't even think about the fact that when those female-owned businesses succeed and get larger, that they turn around and support stuff like the fashion show and stuff. So,
yeah, absolutely,
obvious.
Absolutely.
I'm glad you mentioned that. Then the next question, and then is, let's see. Okay, what, I'm going to say gear, but I guess maybe just what would you say is needed to get started in 2A activism in 2022?
I'm
with
going
new
to right.
questions?
I'm going to say a little bit. Uh, I don't know what the proper mixture would be, but there's got to be some knowledge, and there's got to be some passion, and there's got to be a little bit of time. Like you can't just come out and be like, well, I'm pro gun. Well, how come? Well, because the government shouldn't do this. No, 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 no. Like, what do you when you say you're pro gun? What do you mean? Because you find out some people are pro gun, and they're for magazine restrictions, or they're for they were for the bump stock ban. Okay, that's not pro gun. That's you
What was the
tagging
first one again?
the magazine restrictions. Magazine capacity.
You said passion and time. Sorry, what was the first one?
Oh, so passion. You got to have some knowledge
No.
and some passion and some time. So you have to know about what these things are, and you got to know what you're talking about, because when you've been doing this for a long time and you see somebody come out and they use the terms that we run from. If they're like, well, you should have a 15 round clip in your gun. Ooh, hold on. It's like, take it easy there. Now let's get the same terminology and make sure we're talking about the same thing here. You've got to have some knowledge. You got to know that we don't call them clips. We call them magazines. We don't call them assault weapons. We call them rifles, or we call them ARs, or a modern sporting rifle. We don't call them assault weapons. They're, like you gotta have some information about what it is. You've got to have a passion to do it, because um, and a lot of my stuff comes from being in occupied territory, from being in a non-gun state. You got to have passion for it, because people are going to tell you no. They're going to say, well, you shouldn't have a gun, and you shouldn't do this. And I put something up on Saturday on my town community page that I'm advertising for gun classes in September. And somebody's like, well, I'm offended by this. This shouldn't be out there. Why am I seeing this BS? People, why does he have an automatic rifle on this advertisement, and kids are getting shot in schools with these? And I those, but you gotta you gotta have some passion for it, because people are gonna tell you no. They're gonna kick you, and they're gonna say that you shouldn't do this. And so you gotta love what you're doing. And the time one is, you gotta be able to put the time in. It's not like, well, I want to show up and I'm gonna talk to someone for 3 minutes and then I'm done. I put my time in. And no, you got to be there a little bit beforehand. You got to know what you're talking about. You got to speak intelligently about it. And you might have to take a day off of work. You might have to leave work early. Like, you gotta put some time into this as well.
Dude, I'm trying to take notes, but that's awesome. I just dropped that on you out of no place, and I don't think I could. Well, I definitely didn't expect to see that one coming. That's an awesome answer. So appreciate that. I'm not sure how many people are listening live, but hopefully that woke them up. If you were trying to get to sleep, sorry if that woke you up. So the last question is going to be one I've been attempting to. Well, I've been asking everybody a couple of books, and I haven't been doing it consistently, so I'm not going to count that as a question. But if you do have a couple of books, I'll take them. But I'll put that into my notes here. 2 books you might recommend. But well, actually, I'll just ask that question first. Do you have 2 books that you would recommend to people?
Oh my gosh.
Or movies?
I'm
It doesn't have to be books.
No, so I think John Petrolino's a good friend, and he's got a great book out called Decoding Firearms, and that is a great book for people that are new shooters. So it's a really good book for that.
Okay.
My my personal favorite book on my personal favorite gun book is written by Jeff Cooper. It's called, I'm going to screw the title up, but it's the complete book of the modern technique. And it was written in the late, oh my gosh, early 60s, I think. And all the guns in there are dated. But what I like about it is there's a section on training. And he said that if you want to become better than other shooters at the shooting range, you should dry fire for 10 minutes a day, and then go to the range week. And you should shoot a 3-inch target at 3 feet. And then once you have all your shots, whatever, 100 rounds or something. Once you have all your shots in a 3-inch circle at 3 feet, then move it out to 7 feet. And then after they're in the 7-foot circle, move them out to 10 feet. And then move it out to 15 feet and work your way back out to 20 feet. And I'm like, oh my God, this is the greatest. This gives me a plan of what I need to do. And it's to dry fire for 10 minutes a day and go to the range once a week. And there's no plinking. There's no nothing else. And in 6 months, you'll be good. And 6 years after I started shooting, I was like, man, I should probably put that 6 months in any time now. And I really like that, because to me, it's not, it really, like the Cooper book is to me, the fundamentals of shooting. It's
You're
like, here's how
talking
you become a good
principles
shooter.
of self-defense? The principles
I'm
of
sorry?
personal defense? Is it the one called the principles of
Um,
personal defense?
no, it is, you know what? Let me see if I can dig it
Ride,
up.
shoot straight, and speak the truth. Speak the truth.
Nope.
Okay.
If I can type it in here.
Looking through Cooper's list here.
It's an old book. It's got a red and white-ish cover. There's Jeff Cooper's awesome.
Yeah, well, I'll find it. But appreciate that, because that was, again, out of nowhere. So then the last question is, again, and I believe you're unique in being able to, because you know a lot of the players, and you're not just aware of the players, but you kind of know what they're doing on the board. And you've been, even if you're not 100% aware where everybody is right this second on the board, you know what they're all capable of, and you know, again, what their resources they have available to them. So my question is, you are now the 5-star general at 2A. Gun Rights Policy Conference is about to happen the last couple of days of this month and then beginning of October. And they figure out, you know what, Charlie knows pretty much everybody, and what we're going to do is fund him. He just, he's making 5-star general money. Doesn't have to worry about money no more. He's got the 2A jet. Glock donates their jets. You got the Glock jet. Go wherever you need to go.
I love it.
Right? So you've got everybody is like, what's available to us or to you, and you know what we're capable of. So everyone's willing to take direction. This is now, what do you do for the next 5 years and 10 years?
What do I do?
Yeah. You're the 5-star general at 2A. You got everybody out there on the playing field. How would you use what you got, and what would your objectives be?
I would encourage people to get more people in the fold, and let them go from being anti-gun to a gun agnostic, or from a gun agnostic to pro-gun, like that. The whole 22 is a gateway drug.
I'm down. People, so how would you see, again, everybody's at your disposal. How do you
these stations we have to have at the grocery store, at the movies, standing in line at the checkout, and just letting people know, say, hey, listen, have you ever gone shooting before? We got to have these conversations so we get more people that are into it. I think with the pandemic, and certainly not necessarily the pandemic, but with all the riots and the lockdowns in 2020, we had some non-gun people that did come out and said, oh, I can't just go buy a gun. I've got to take a class. What do you mean I have to pass background checks? I have to do all this stuff. So I think we need to educate more people. And if it's not for them, that is totally cool. Like, I don't have a problem having it not be for people, but get them so they're not afraid of it, and they're not concerned about, oh my gosh, he's got a gun, and I saw him screaming and shouting at somebody in the parking lot. So I think I'm afraid for my life, because I know he's got a Smith & Wesson sticker on his car, and he's mad, so he's a lunatic. I need to call the police and have him red flagged and take his guns away. I think we need to get more people into it, and turn people onto it by sharing stories, by letting them see the content that people are putting out. By getting people into it and keeping them informed, or getting them informed, and saying, hey, listen, we don't have assault rifles. We have rifles, and assault's an action. It's not an, oh my God, adjective, or it's an adjective. It's not an action, and how come it's okay for these people to have, politicians. How come it's okay for politicians and police officers to be protected with firearms, but not with other people to be protected with firearms? So we need to get more people into it and make it more normal. Make shooting normal again. Make owning a gun not crazy, or make it special. Not make it not special, but not make it taboo, I guess.
Make it normal, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Normal again, as I think that was Paul saying, or I think that was well, somebody said that lately. I said make guns normal, and they said make them again. And I'm like, oh yeah, even better.
Yeah.
Have you met David Yamane, the Professor Yamane?
I have not. Real quick, the book is called, the Jeff Cooper book is The Complete Book of Modern Handgunning.
Okay.
And the cover has a red banner on the top, and it's got pictures of 3 different guns, a single action, a semi-auto, and a revolver on it. The Complete Book of Modern.
Have you been to gun site before?
I have not been to gun site. I know I've got some friends that are going this year. They're going next month, and I was hoping to pull it off, but I was not. So anyway, yeah, I would love to get. And of course, I was like, well, if I'm, back in the spring, I'm like, I don't know how I'm going to do it, but I'm gonna go to gun site with everybody, and then I started carrying my 1911 around and drawing my 1911 out and practicing drawing the gun out and turning the safety off. And I'm like, all right, the safety is baloney, man. Like, I'm gonna go back to using a Glock. But David Yamane, he's in one of the Carolinas, I believe, right?
I think so. He's on the East Coast, but I don't know exactly. He's at a school out there.
Yeah, I think he's in one of the Carolinas. I'd love to have him on the show. I'd love to have everybody on the show. Like, I want to increase my circle of friends. I tell folks that I want to get to the point where I'm known as Charlie. Like, that's it. Like, one name. Like Bono, like Elvis, like Kramer. Like, I want people to be like, oh, have you talked to Charlie? Do you know Charlie? Have you been on Charlie's show? And I like, that would be the coolest thing,
Yeah, definitely.
But yeah, I want to have. I mean, I want to. What's that?
You're getting there.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm getting there. It's a lot of work, and it's cool.
Well, the reason I guess I was asking about the professor is because his campaign, I guess, his guns are normal. And
yeah, absolutely.
You're kind of getting there, I think. All right. Well, again, thanks for coming on. There are a couple of questions that came up. Do you still have a?
Yeah, sure. Sure. I know
okay.
Someone asked a while ago. I mean, I saw some of the questions. A lot of great stuff on here. Somebody asked.
Start here. Go
ahead. Somebody asked if I ever freaked out or was starstruck. Honestly, it's one of these things where I do get starstruck, and then I do the show, and then I go back and watch it, and I'm like, oh my God, I can't believe I can't believe I drove Masada Ayub around. And I interviewed Mass in Florida in February of 2019. And it was one of these things where I knew he was going to this event. Kevin Sona was telling me that Mass was speaking at it, and he's like, hey, you should have Mass on the show. And I'm like, you know what? I met him once before. I got his phone number, and I need to call him. And it was one of these things where I told myself, Friday by 1 o'clock, I'm calling Masada Ayub. And Friday at 1:05, I get a phone call from Kevin. And I'm like, oh my God, how did he know? Like, how did he know that I was going to call Mass? And so I told him the whole thing. I said, by 1 o'clock, I was going to call Mass, and it's 5 after when I said I was going to call him. And he's like, dude, call me in 10 minutes. Let me know how it goes. And I called him. I'm like, hi, Mass. My name's Charlie Cook. I know you don't remember me, but we met Gun Rights Policy Conference 2016. I'm going to this event in Florida. You're going to this event in Florida. I interview people in the car. Would you be interested in getting in the car and riding around with me? And he's like, sure, sounds good. I'm like, okay, great, thanks. Click. Like, like, I didn't get enough details. Like, we don't have a plan. I need to know what's going on. And then meet him in person. You're like, holy crap, man, that's Masada Ayub. That was
super down to earth. He's very much like he doesn't lord it over anybody. That he's got such a stature in the community or whatever. He's very. There's a lot of people who you must be in the same position. You've met even more people than I have, and There's people that'll react differently when people come up and shower them with that kind of attention. And
Hmm.
Moss is, well, he's super experienced at it, but he's just it's not humble. It's just, he understands it. And he accepts people. He's just very gracious about it. Is that the way to do it?
Yeah,
Very
I think
cool
that's a
dude.
great word.
And you don't have to spend a lot. He doesn't need a lot of time. He can kind of, luckily, I think people help vet, people, so he doesn't get too many yahoos coming up to him. But, he appreciates, people that want to hang out. He offers his presence, right? He offers his time and his insight, which is super cool.
Mm.
And, a lot of people expect something from that. I think that's the word. Anyway, so yeah, that's a great example. I don't know if I ever mentioned it ever, but he's the only people I think that I ever went up and said, "Hey, Masada Ayub, can I get a picture taken with you?" That was in 2009. And that was the first and last picture I ever took with somebody. And I was like, that felt really weird. I'm never doing that again. And then
Oh my gosh.
I knew him,
So
so
go ahead.
go ahead. I was just gonna say,
I was
ever since I've known him, and he's I don't want to say he's my grandpa, but he's like a super nice guy. I like to think if I go standing around somewhere, Masada even knows who I am.
Yeah, it's that is pretty cool when that kind of stuff happens. I was just thinking of something and I lost my train. That's all right.
I was
It
guessing it
is.
was just talking about like the one and only time I went and got the selfie or whatever. It was a
Oh,
long
the
time ago,
selfies.
but
That's was one of the things when I first started doing this. I'm like, oh my god, I got to get a selfie with them. Oh my god, I got to get a selfie. Like every time I see them, I got to get my picture with them. I got to get my picture. And now you see these people, you run into them enough. You're like, I don't really need to get a picture. I don't need the social proof or whatever.
here's a question:
There's plenty of
Did
pictures.
you
Yeah.
stop asking for selfies before someone asked you for a selfie, or did someone ask you for a selfie made you stop asking other people for selfies?
Oh God, I stopped asking because I'm like, I went from being a guy that had an idea and then started a YouTube channel, and then um like eventually I get to the point where I'm like, okay, so these are kind of like my peers, and I don't want to be like, oh my god, I can't believe it's you. Oh, let's get our picture together. I'm like, dude, I don't have to get their picture every time. I've got their phone number. I can call and text them or what.
Exactly, right. It's like going up to your friend at work. Hey, let's get a selfie. I mean, some people do that anyway, I guess, but yeah, I totally understand. So, next question is from DJ. Hardest gun gram choreography. Which ones were the most difficult? Took the most number of
Oh my
takes?
gosh. Oh man, that is a good question. At first, I was a one take Charlie. Like I'm doing them in one take and that's it. And I wasn't, I guess, confident with my editing skills because I didn't want to have anything edited too much. Then I got to the
In
point
other
where I'm
words,
like,
you weren't just like RoboCop or Terminator where you could just knock it out in one take. You're just saying you would do it over and over until you didn't have to edit it, and it would be one shot.
yeah, right. And
Okay.
I'm like, I would, maybe say depending on how much ammunition I'm using and how much reloading and all that kind of stuff, I wanted to do it and have one take. And that was it. And then I got to the point where I could be a little more artsy with things and do the oh my god, what did you call them? The J clips, the J hooks.
I just watched the show and they call them J and L clips. I don't know if that's a thing or
Okay,
if that's just what that channel. But
yeah, no, they are a thing, and I can't remember what they are exactly. But then I started to use the Adobe for the gun grams. I use my phone, and Adobe has a free, I think it's a free, video editing software. I used to use iMovie, but Adobe has one, and that you can put very much like using Adobe Premiere on my computer. So I would plan things like I would go through a shot list and say, okay, well, I'm going to play the song, and then I need to get video of me, spinning my trumpet, or a video of my feet, or I'm going to put some slow motion in here of me racking the slide and having the cartridges come out, and then I'd kind of come up with a shot list like that, and then I'd say, okay, I got all this video, I'm going to put them all together and edit it so it's whatever, a minute 15 seconds or something, minute and a half, and try to figure that out. And there's certainly plenty of times when I'm like, I make a shot list of things I want to, get video of, and then I forget it and don't get crap. Now I find a way to work around it or do something else. I think one that was really fun was Dr. Worm by They Might Be Giants. And on, I'm really a trombone player, but I do play the trumpet on the gungrams. And I have a Walther P22, and the old jazz guys used to rest the bell of the trombone on their wrist, and they'd use the plunger mute, and the right hand's on the slide. So I would, for that particular video, I rested the bell of the trombone on my left wrist. I shot left-handed and used my slide, and that was a little tricky. I'm like, oh my God, what if I shoot my slide? That's going to be a very big problem. But I like that one because I ended up doing I got video of me playing the trumpet and playing the trombone at the same time, and I put them together into a little mix, so you can hear a melody part and a bass part, and shooting in both videos. That one was a lot of fun.
Bonus question: what's your favorite We Might Be Giant song?
I don't know any others besides Dr. Worm.
Oh, that wasn't the group that you.
No, I mean, when I was in high school and in college, I listened to a bunch of jazz, and then I ended up moving back to Boston, and I started listening to ska, and the Mighty Mighty Boss Tones and Real Big Fish and stuff, and I started to dig that stuff because I'm like, it's not rock and roll, but they got great horn sections and the music's upbeat, and yeah, I love the Boss Tones. I think they're great.
Okay. I accidentally bought ska records thinking they were punk records, so I've listened to ska. Does that count as listening to ska?
Yeah, they called it ska punk.
Back in the day, you bought records. Because like back in the day, you bought records based on
you bought records too.
Be like, oh, this is the same thing as I didn't think this was going to sound like this. But anyway, I understand the music you're talking about. I can't say that I'm aficionado or anything. Is this Dexy's Midnight Runners is not ska?
No, I just think that's like 80s pop.
Pop, okay. But
yeah,
they're the ones that dress like that, like overalls and stuff, or is that?
Yeah, and they dance with the "Come On, Eileen." Yeah,
but I'm saying is ska where they're dressing in overalls all the time, and it's like from Europe.
No, so the ska guys were into wearing suits.
Oh, then I'm thinking of something totally different.
Yeah, I mean the Mighty Mighty Boss Tones wore suits all the time.
Okay. I gotcha. Yeah. Is it like 50 suits?
No, they didn't have thin ties, but they'd it's suit pants and a jacket and a nice shirt and a tie. They didn't have like the thin, the thin ties like the beatniks. But there was I guess there was a ska era in the 70s where they did have that with oh my gosh, what was I can't remember the Specials. The Specials were into like 1950s, wear a pork pie hat and wafer sunglasses and a thin tie. But they were, man, the Specials I think were the late 70s, early 80s.
Well, all right. I was going to save this one until we got to answer the questions, but I'm looking at Barbecue's question. You kind of already answered about the Rod of Iron Festival. You said you'd like to go next year. Should we take a second and talk about what that even is, the Rod of Iron Festival in Pennsylvania?
So the Rod of Iron Festival is at the Tommy Gun Warehouse. It's put on by Car Arms, and they have two brothers. One of them got into firearms. The other one got into religion, and they have their own little religion. They are the Moonies. I don't want to. Their father was the Reverend who escaped Korea thanks to the American military. So they realized that firearms are very important because they were, their father got out of Korea, but I think in the Korea War, but before there was North and South, maybe before there was North and South Korea, I'm not 100% sure, but it's this big event that they do, and they have they've had Stephen Williford speak at this. Mark Walters has been there. Man, they do a fashion show. They have machine guns you can go shoot. Obviously, there's vendors for food and T-shirts and all sorts of stuff, and it's just kind of a cool little thing that they throw. And it's a 2-day long weekend. It's a Saturday and Sunday, and Amanda Suffolk asked if I wanted to go to this a couple years ago, so I'm like, yeah, sure. And the next year she's like, hey, we're doing a fashion show. Do you want to MC it? Yeah, sure. And the next year she's like, hey, they're doing a fashion show and they're gonna put us up this time. I'm like, oh, that's even better. Now we got a hotel to stay at.
Oh, that's
And
even cool.
it's
Why not?
yeah, it's a really cool. It's kind of a cool thing, and it's fun to go to. And there's since there are Korean, there's a lot of Korean folks that go to this, but there's a lot of white Americans, or like sometimes we call it cheese. There's a lot of whatever white folks. There's a lot of people. I'm not saying it's just for Koreans, but I think over the last couple of years, there's been less Koreans and more Americans. I know that's the bad way to say it and make it sound horrible and whatever, but
I had no
yeah,
idea. I thought it was more of just an open thing. So it sounds like it's the evolution of something from the church that's getting larger, as opposed to
it's
something that was like created as an industry event out of nowhere. Because it's happening. It's been
I,
going for a while.
I think it's a little of both. Like there's some people that are like they don't sell guns, but there's some people that are gun vendors, and they'll sell some products and they have a bunch of speakers for 2 days. They have a band, a couple bands that play, and they have some education classes that are going on as well. Kelly Pigeons taught a couple classes about carrying for women and different ways that they can carry.
Well, it makes more sense too that it's coming from the church side. So I think of it. I've been a big fan. We call this the daily gun show because I've been a big fan of gun shows my whole life. I've been going to gun shows forever. I've traveled a lot, so I've gone to gun shows in different parts of the country and different times of my life. So throughout the spans of decades, I've been going to gun shows. I really appreciate them. So I named the show the Daily Gun Show, so that we can kind of play. Well, I call my tour the Gun Show Loophole Tour to play off the loophole thing, and then to keep the gun show thing going. Do the Daily Gun Show here. So then, as I've experienced that one from afar, because I haven't been able to get over there, it's too far from Tucson to get to that one. But I've been watching the things like, I don't know if you've been paid attention to the ones on this side of the country are the Red October happens pretty soon here in Vegas. And then there's one called Kalash Bash, Texas that happens in Texas. And these are
cool.
if they're not on your radar, I mean, they're just kind of unique, but it's similar to Rod of Iron in that I call them like a hybrid. You've been to Media Day at the range now, which is basically going to a shooting range and having vendors and manufacturers and different people show up, have an opportunity to pull triggers, get a feel for the firearm and hear from the manufacturers directly about what's so good about it and that kind of thing. And then it's an opportunity for media to take video and to see, get actual feedback from people who are experiencing it, right? So it's not just like, it's a really cool thing. And then you've been to Media Day. So Media Day is invite only. You have to be pressed to get there, or a manufacturer's kind of a lot of hurdles to get to it. Happens for one day, literally. It's in Vegas, which is nice, but it'd be nicer if it was all over the place. And that's what this seems to be, like a version of that mixed with a gun show, mixed with an event, just like not quite a rally, a little bit bigger, more elaborate than that. Like say it's a couple of days, but they've got like music that shows up and people come just to be like at the concert part of it. So it's kind of like a state fair, except Second Amendment focused, not just gun focused, but then definitely gun themed, right? And I just think that's cool because gun shows are dying. Gun shows kind of took a lot of hits and a lot of abuse and not a lot of appreciation. So the gun show promoters are out there doing what they can, which is, all they can do. But these type of things, like you're talking about the Rod of Iron, I'm talking about with the AK ones, and there's some other things, when they closed it now, I guess, but what was the big machine gun shoot in Tennessee?
Knob Creek.
Knob Creek, thank you, yeah. When Knob Creek was going, it had a big gun show too. So it was essentially the same kind of an evolution of a get together that, because a rally is great, but a rally is because we're getting abused, right? We're getting attacked and we need to get together to resist. So there's a reason for that. And we kind of have a reason to be there. But these are just kind of being able to kick back and enjoy it and learn and in this case, get some education and stuff. So anyway, I just thought it was cool to take a second to chat about it. And I'm glad they were able to participate in it. And the fact that it's it's large enough that it's able to help you get there
Mhm.
I'm super encouraged that one, it's getting bigger. If you said, well, they said we can come if we pay our own, like this kind of thing, that'd be a different indication. So that's cool.
Yeah, I think the first year uh, they put us up in like a dorm style. Like we stayed at some. It seemed like a dormitory. Like they had a big area for cafeteria, and they had these little teeny tiny rooms with a couple small
Like
beds
a camp or
and
something
maybe a
for the church.
dresser. Yeah, yeah, something like that. And then the next year, Amanda's like, "All right, there's we got a hotel." I'm like, "Oh, that's cool." Certainly makes it
Right on.
easier.
Well, I mean, yeah, it's neat to have adventures and stuff, but it's also nice to be comfortable when you're trying to get a job done or whatever.
Oh yeah, definitely.
All
Definitely.
right, so a couple more. DJ asked, before you carried a firearm daily, were there any times or incidents in the past where you wish you had carried a firearm? How did you handle it? I guess that's kind of a whole ball of worms there. So
Right. I never did. I never did. I did play in a like I said, I played in a band for a long time, and there was one time where some couple was gonna hire us to play at their wedding, and I didn't know who they were. Like I don't do any of the biz. I go in, I play, and drink beers and go home. And some gal came up and started talking to me, and I'm just having a conversation with her, and then her husband was there, and he was you know crap faced drunk, and he's like, "Hey man, we're not gonna hire your band. Stop talking to my wife." I'm like, "Dude, I don't know what you're talking about, man. Like, this is ridiculous." But never had someone break into my house or anything like that. Carrying, I think it was after that I was started to carry a Leatherman, because I'm like, a Leatherman's got a knife on it, and I can bring it into a nightclub because it's got tools on it as well. So kind of a handy thing to have. But and I didn't have any knife training. I wasn't a pro gun guy. This is before I was a gun guy. I do remember talking to the guys in the band saying, I think this gun stuff is pretty cool. Like, I think I want to carry one of those little revolvers. And a buddy of mine's like, you want to carry a 38? I'm like, yeah, a 38. That's what I want to carry.
because you saw it on a TV show or something, probably.
Yeah, I thought that's, you think of these old detectives pulling out a little snub nose revolver.
Yeah. It
Yeah,
also is kind of the
fun.
equivalent of the get off of me. You're not looking for trouble. You're just able to be capable of resisting attack. Right? You're not
Exactly,
offensive, which
exactly.
is basically defensive.
Yeah.
Which is probably one of the reasons why we won't get into the whole thing about small revolvers at the end of a show. But the last question is a good one from DJ, actually. It's a great end of the show question. What was the worst car rental experience ever? Funniest in traffic interaction with other motorists?
Oh my gosh.
That one about the worst. I would
All
ask the
right.
best, but which was the most interesting car experience for you?
The worst car experience one. I went to Where's Rent a Car? I went to the Florida Carry event in March of last year, 2021. I am I hate saying this now, but I'm a Dave Ramsey guy. He's a debt-free guy, and I was debt-free, and I got rid of my credit cards in 2012, and in January of 2015, I paid off the car I had before I had the car I have now. And so for
Nice.
6 years, 6 years, no credit cards. For 10 years now, no credit cards. And I went to the Florida Carry event, and I've got a Visa debit card, and it's worked for everything. And I get cars at Enterprise. It's worked at everything every other time. I get down to Florida Carry. Somebody, I think it was with Mike Piawarski and Dr. John Adine. I think they dropped me off at the place in the Orlando, at the car rental place outside of Orlando. And I went there, and I'm like, all right, I want to rent a car. I got a reservation. You guys called me for it. We're good to go. Here's my driver's license. Here's my debit card. And they're like, oh, since you're using a debit card, we need to have an electric bill, a phone bill. Like, they needed all this stuff. And I'm like, what? And they're like, yeah, we have to have, since you don't have a credit card and you have a debit card, we're going to put an extra $250 on here and hold that. And we need to have all this other stuff to prove where you live. And I'm like, I've never had to have that anyplace else. And I'm good friends with my insurance guy, so I called his office and I'm like, can you make a copy of this and send it to me as a PDF so I can show it to these people? And it was just a hassle. And it took an extra hour and 15 minutes to get this nonsense done. I was livid. I was like, I'm supposed to be out doing stuff right now, and instead I'm sitting here getting a copy of our insurance policy to show you that I am who I am. So this is ridiculous.
Dude, that's so crazy. In 2009, we went to SHOT Show in Florida. It was the last time I was in Florida, and I brought two dudes. So it was expensive to get 3 of us from Tucson to Florida, and we get out there, literally same thing. Except we didn't get the car. Like, we got there. Oh yeah, you can use this credit card. We're like, what? So now we're standing at I don't know how it actually is, because I don't, it was a long time ago and I didn't live there, but we're standing at whatever the rental car place is off of the airport, I'm assuming, next to some highway with no rental car in the middle of the night. And in Florida shuts down. I'm not used to parts that just shut down at night. Like, it was one of those kind of deals. So the 3 of us and everybody else was looking at me like, or those other 2 guys were looking at me like, yeah, real good planning, real good running this trip. But anyway, yes, and that's when I decided, you know what? I don't like this idea of flying to places. I think I'll start driving to places.
Yeah,
you can break down I've made a couple. You can do stuff about it. You can't do shit about it when you're, standing there and there's nobody that takes your credit card.
Oh my gosh, yeah, a little frustrating.
Anyway, so yeah, that's interesting. The same kind of thing happened. It must be something about Florida because they got so many international or so many tourists. Probably just in general, they probably get a lot of scams and stuff.
I'm sure. I was John Petrolino and I went to Gun Prom in San Diego back in June.
Oh, we didn't even talk about that. I'm going to have Mike on next week. His interview with you was freaking awesome. And as soon as I was been telling people, I'm listening to the interview. He gets to the 3 points where he's like, we don't, we rely too much on lawsuits. We don't utilize the media. And I'm like, pause.
Yeah.
And I'm writing him a fucking email. Can you come on my show? So he's on next week.
That's awesome.
We chatted an hour. Yeah, that was freaking great. And same thing with Toby from Cape Gunworks. I listened to that interview, and I don't know if you probably hadn't heard of this, but I was listening to the radio here in town and in Tucson, and Toby's on there, and he's saying something about 2A, and I'm like, what the hell? I just hear about 2A on the radio in Tucson. And then, something else happened, and I'm not paying attention, and then the next week something else like 2A again, and I'm like, damn, this is a show about 2A. And then it's on the radio, so what am I supposed to do about it? It just happens. I can't stop and listen to the radio or whatever. So I just know that it was happening, and then you have him on, and I'm like, this is the dude. And then I hear the story, and I've been hanging out listening to his radio show ever since. Anyway,
that's
so
awesome.
Yeah, your show is great for getting people aware of this great work that's been going on. Sorry, I cut you off there though, but
no, I think that's great. I mean, that's you know what that's what it's about. It's about letting to me it's about expanding my circle of friends and letting more people in circles. There have been a few times when people said, I didn't know about that person, but that person was really cool. And then just like with you, they're like, I hear this guy and then I see him on your show and I'm like, holy crap, this is awesome.
Well, I was texting him. You were talking about Gun Prom. I cut you off to talk about that, Michael's.
So Gun Prom. Yeah. So car rental stuff. My plan at Gun Prom is, so John had the rental car and I was just tagging along and I used it for a couple shows, but I was going to, on the last day, I was going to rent a car because I had to drive. It was 100 miles from Anaheim to San Diego to catch my flight. And I couldn't get a rental car because so it was going to be about $150 to rent a vehicle to drive it from Anaheim to San Diego. And they wouldn't give it to me because I have a debit card. So I ended up calling an Uber, and the first thing I said to the guys, I said, listen, I got to go 100 miles to San Diego. Like, I just want you to know ahead of time, because it's going to be, an hour and a half to get down there and then an hour and a half to get back. So, I want to give them the courtesy of, hey, this is going to be a long time. So, and I ended up getting an Uber for honestly the same price as getting the rental car, but less hassle. So that was good.
Crazy. Well, but you're 2 hours into this. I think I hit most of the questions. I'm sorry if I missed some of the questions from the live people, but the good news is we've chatted so long that they've all fallen asleep, so they don't even know that we missed the questions. But Charlie, I do appreciate you coming on. I think I kind of mentioned off air, and I'll run my end credits, and we can still chat if you're still awake when it's over. But I've been doing the one interview each Monday with people, and then inviting you all back again to have a chat together. So if you're available and awake later on in the month, I'll invite you back, and I'll keep inviting you on the last Monday of each month if you ever are awake and want to chat with other activists and just shoot the shit. It's no agendas, just talking about whatever's up, or whatever, usually when you bring two people together, there's a bunch of stuff that they didn't know they had in common. It's just fun for everybody to kind of let that happen.
Yeah,
So
cool.
so again, thanks for joining us, and if they're on the way out here, I'll let you have the end of the show. If there's anything you want to plug, if you've got anything coming up, yeah, thanks again.
Well, first of all, thanks for having me on. I'm glad we finally made this happen, and I was able to get you. You were able to get me in the schedule, and I was able to get you in the schedule. If people haven't checked out Riding Shotgun with Charlie, please do. They can watch it on YouTube, on Gunstreamer, on the OpsLens app, and they can listen to it in podcast form as well. And it's on all the podcast stuff. It's on iTunes and it was Apple Podcasts and Spotify and iHeart Radio, and a bunch of people take it from there. So if they haven't checked it out, please do. Please subscribe. And I love that I put shows out, and you're like the first person that comments all the time, and I really appreciate it. I really do, G-Webs.
Yeah, you bet. I just happened to, I got Patreons. There's this thing scrolling at the bottom of the screen. People subscribe to what we do. They buy us maybe a cup of coffee, maybe lunch once a month. And when enough people buy you a cup of coffee or a lunch, you're able to pay some bills and spend time on things like this without a focus on, trying to get you to buy something. So, yeah, I really appreciate it. What I'll do is work on different websites or projects and be listening to you, Cheryl, Todd, Toby, and Paul, right? All the shows that are on. So it's great for you. I thank you for being there to have something on. I don't have to listen to this like radio or listen to a movie or something.
I am baffled by how much content you take in, because I don't think there's one show that I've listened to or watched where you haven't commented on. I'm like, I don't know.
I don't watch anything that deals with the conversation again. Like if somebody's paying attention to news of the day, I'm usually not watching it. Some of my friends that insist on watching news of the day, I've been friends with for a decade or more, I guess now. I'll hang out with them. That's usually where I get my news of the day.
Right.
But yeah, most of the time, I'm only focused on probably the same stuff you're focused on, because you're either researching somebody to chat with or just paying attention to what's happening.
It's good.
Right.
All good stuff, man.
All right. Well, I'll chat with you a bit here and off air, but yeah, I think actually one of the reasons I have people on is so we can chat off air, because I got a couple ideas. I won't keep you on too late here, but I'm just throw my end thing up here. Say thanks again to those. You have a Patreon, don't you?
I do not.
Okay. Well, we'll be talking off air about that. But
yes.
Thanks to the people that subscribe to what we're doing, and you can grab stuff over at the merch section or the store section of ridingshotgunwithcharlie.com. Right? That's the most. I'm guessing that's the most immediate way for somebody to.
That's the easiest.
Support your way.
Well, Charlie, that's it.
All right, I'm gonna stick around. I'm gonna throw this on, and then we'll chat for a second here.
Tonight's episode: The Endangered Species.
Thank you for supporting our projects. If you'd like to buy us a cup of coffee, check out our Patreon channel.
The guys and gals at gunwebsites.com encourage you to take a CCW class every year, practice at least once a month, and carry every day. Thank you for watching gunwebsites.com. Do 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 do.